I've been using the Undersun resistance loop bands for a couple years now. However, I've received many comments on these serious steel bands, so I went to Amazon, bought them, and I'm going to do an unboxing and review for you guys so you can see if I like this product more than Undersun. So hopping over to the Amazon store page, the serious steel bands came in at $119 for the 6 bands they give you. That's right, not 5 bands, but 6. So I bought these, again, $119, and after Texas taxes, it came out to $128.82. And for the unboxing, we're going to start off with the 6 resistant loop bands. So again, this is different than Undersun that only give you 5, where you get 6 in the serious steel bands. Now each of these bands is 41 inches in length, but that would be if you cut them and then laid them out on the floor. They also come in different colors, which is kind of a pro here, because now if a band is similar in size, you can quickly identify which one you want to use based on that color coding. Also, the bands are made of natural latex according to the store page, so before buying, make sure you're not allergic to latex or else you might run into a problem very quickly. And lastly, I noticed that they had a weird white coating over the bands themselves. This might be done during manufacturing. It does come off a little bit on my fingers, but I went and tried to actually wash this off as it is on all 6 of the bands. But it's kind of strange in that it kind of looked like it came off, but then when I just let them lay around, it seemed like the coating was still there. So I'm not sure if it's supposed to be there, if this is like a weird coating thing during manufacturing. But another thing I noticed is that I might actually be allergic to that dust because I actually got some on my fingers, then touched my face, and my eyes started to feel really itchy. So I'm going to jump into this now. I'm probably not going to keep these because I think I might be allergic to that dust, but I'm going to cover the rest of this review so you can see if they might be right for you. But the dust is a big issue for me personally if I am allergic to it. So with that, let's take a look at the 6 bands and the resistance ranges of each one. Now note, these aren't exact pound ranges, and I don't actually track using them by these pounds at all, but I'm going to go over each color and what they say each one represents. So the first one is the orange band and smallest of all the bands, and that one has a range of 2 to 15 pounds. The next one is the purple band, second one up, and it has a range of 5 to 30 pounds. Going on to our third band, we have the red one, which has a range of 10 to 50 pounds. The next one up is the blue band, which has a range of 25 to 80 pounds. Our second to last one, or 5th band, is the green band, which goes from 50 to 120 pounds. And the largest and heaviest of the bands is the black one, coming in at 60 to 150 pounds of resistance. So no, I do not use these ranges at all in my tracking. I am going to go over how I would track them though, and first off, I do use an app for this, and it is called the Heavy app. I have made a review, so I will link it in the description of this video if you'd like to check out a review of that product, as I really think this app is awesome. But let's take a look at how I would track with these. So the one major difference is that we have 6 bands now. So in my old version with the Undersun, we only had 5, so each one was worth an increment of 10. So you had 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50 pounds for those 5 bands based on their size and resistance strength. Again, for this, we're going to change this a little bit, where the smallest band actually starts at 5 pounds of resistance. So because of that, the breakdown goes like this. The first one is the orange band, coming in at 5 pounds. Next up is the purple band at 10 pounds, red band at 20 pounds, blue band at 30 pounds, green band at 40 pounds, and black band at 50 pounds. Now again, these are just arbitrary numbers I use for tracking, but I'm going to go over how I would put this in an app so I can use progressive overload and get stronger. So of course, if you're just starting out, try and pick a band where you think you'd get to about 10 reps and it's struggling to do the last 3 or so reps, and then from there focus on form technique until you are maxing out all the 10 reps, and then you can add on more or higher resistance bands, or even start combining bands to make it even tougher for progressive overload. But now that we have that 5 pound labeled band, we can do something a little different than doing my old style, as we're going to actually go up with the 5 pound band instead of the 10 one. So if you're starting out with, say, just like bicep curls, and you start with the 5 pound band, you do all 10 reps fine, and whatever how many sets you want to do, you want to move the next, you do 5, then 10, but now we can do 15 after, because we can combine the 10 and the 5 together before getting to the 20. So again, you start with the 5, max all that, so you're good there. You move up to the 10 pound band, good, you max all those, that's fine. But now we can do 15 pounds instead of the bigger jump to 20 by doing the 10 and the 5 together. From there we go to 20, and then from there we could do 25 now instead of jumping all the way to the 30-pound band. So you see how I'm going here? I'm basically adding that smaller band in the middle increments of those 10 all the way up to the 50-pound band, and then once we get past 50, we can do 55, and now we can do 60 pounds by adding the 10 and 50 together, and then we could do 65 pounds with the 5, 10, and 60. So again, you can kind of just increment up as you go and make this a bit easier to work with by just adding multiple bands together. Alright, with that, let's go into me testing out the serious steel bands. Now you will know I am wearing gloves in all of the B-roll shots of this because again, I don't want to touch my hands again on my face and stuff because I'm going to wash the gloves afterwards, but I am using the Undersun Resistance bands gloves in order to test with this so I can avoid it touching my skin. First off, they're very well made. I actually think this is a great product overall in terms of quality, good latex construction, seem to have come to me without any frays or anything like that. I do see where they might have been like cut apart, so maybe they were making like multiple and where there's like a seam where it was cut, but it's not going into the bands I have, it's just a little teeny raised portion of a couple of the bands I have. So I don't think it's going to cause any issues, but it is something I noticed that I didn't see on the other bands. I really love that the bands are color-coded, and this is actually something I really love about these SunPal bands. Now, the only reason I don't use those over Undersun is they're just a little too tight when I'm trying to get into my exercise movements, especially things that are overhead. So one problem with resistance band training is overhead movements. You basically have to squat down all the way to the ground, get in the movement, and then stand up with that resistance. Now, if there's a ton of resistance, especially with the big gaps, like say from the 4th to the 5th band, that big 10-pound gap I'll put in here, which isn't really pounds, but that 10 difference in the band strength, sometimes that gap is just too much to overcome to even get into position. So that is where I have a problem with the SunPal bands, where the Undersun bands I can still at least get into position in order to perform the exercises. And that's mainly why I've used them to this day, because SunPal bands are actually cheaper than Undersun. And also, I love that this product comes with these 6 bands, and I hope Undersun and other brands see this and add a 6th band in. That way you can have that little incremental one for things like progressive overload. So that's a really nice touch. Just make sure that it falls in between the band's resistance, not that it's like more or super less than another one. Because again, you need that band to actually be like between, say, a 10 to 20 pound band. You don't want it to be like the same as another one or close to the same resistance as another one, or it's just not going to work. And my last pro is that all the bands fit into my drawstring bag. Now I do use this for storage and traveling with, so it fits all the bands in there comfortably along with the J-hook handles and my gloves as well. So now we're going on to the cons, and my first one is a pretty easy one in that this product, the Serious Steel bands, are very expensive compared to most other ones I've tried. Actually, they are the most expensive bands I've bought to date. Again, being at $119 or basically $120, we're just gonna round up. Price tag for these is about double actually the price of the Undersun right now, and then like 3 times the cost of the SunPal bands. So again, I'd probably actually go with SunPal bands if I was comparing the two, because again, they have the color coding and stuff. They're not quite as well made, but I think they still last a long time for most people and would be getting a lot of good use as long as you're not like 6 feet or taller. Then they may become an issue with doing, again, those overhead movements. But I'd probably go with that route over these if you're looking to save money. So again, the cost is going to be kind of the bigger issue for most people. Now, a bigger con I've run into on this one is that the black band, which is the strongest and biggest of the bands, as well as the green one, are very hard to get into when doing overhead-based movements. So again, this was a problem that I had with these SunPal bands, which again are a third of the cost of these, but I can't even get into a front squat position with the black band. That's how tight this band is. I did test with the other one, so everything outside of the last 2 bands, the 2 tougher bands are hard for me to get into any kind of like chest or higher movement with these bands. But everything below that, I can actually get into position pretty well. So I could just work with the other ones, see if I get strong enough for the bigger bands, I guess. But in this case, it would be tough. It'd be tough for me to only work with those 3 bands and still feel like I got enough. I'm not sure if I'd ever get to the green band with the lower bands that I have. Like, I don't know if I could progressive overload to the green bands. But again, I haven't tested it, so it's possible. But kind of a con I see right away with buying these and being at the cost or the price that they are currently listed at. And my last con is one I touched on already, and that is the dust that is on these bands. Now, again, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be like an actual product-based thing. Like, maybe it's supposed to be like some kind of tough guy thing, I don't know, where you like use them and it's kind of like putting chalk on your hands or something, where it can make it slide better or set up easier, something like that. But it's weird that when I even tried to wash it off, it almost seems like it's still on there. So it's like a residue that like stays on the bands, but does come off on my fingertips a little bit. And again, I got it on my hands and put it on my face and my eyelids, and it really started to itch my skin really bad. So again, I think I'm allergic to it. So that's why I'll be personally returning these. But again, I got so many comments that these are great. And again, I think the bands are actually really well made, but I do have some cons with them in my setup and personally with this weird dust thing going on that I really just can't use them, unfortunately. So I will personally be going back to the Undersun bands for this video. So with that, my final thoughts, as I mentioned, is that I'm going back to Undersun because I really can't deal with the dust piece of this. I just don't know if I'm allergic to it or not. Again, I get pretty irritated skin when touching it, so I'm just not going to risk it, and I'm probably going to be sending these bands back. Outside of that, I think they're pretty good. Besides, I guess, the two stronger bands being hard to get into overhead position, the rest of them are pretty good. They're made well. They're the same size as the Undersun bands. Most exercises feel pretty good with them. They fit in the triangle links, except for again for the black band. So again, I have those like pros and cons where I think the bands are good. They would work for things like assisted pull-ups if you want to do something like that. But personally, I'd probably either go with the Sunpound bands or the Undersun bands for bands I personally tested, or loop bands I've tested at this time. I would probably stay away from the Steel Series band with my personal setup, but you may find some other use for them. But with that, I'm going to throw a couple of videos on screen, the Undersun bands, the Sunpound bands, and my setup so that you can kind of take a look and see if those will work better for you in your home gym.